Council, come to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mandy, would you please call the roll?
Hamstra.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
Carlstone.
Here.
Van Strylen.
Here.
Randall is absent and Hopkins may be joining via phone.
City Council has adopted a code of civility. As elected officials, we pledge to promote civility through extending respect to others, listening to understand, disagreeing without disrespect, engaging collaboratively, and speaking up to address incivility. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and broadcast for Pella TV, so anyone who speaks to council, please come to the podium and that microphone before speaking so that those listening at home can hear your comments and see you on camera. Can I get a motion for approval of the tentative agenda?
So moved. Support.
Vanstra, Carlstone, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Hamstra.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Motion passed. This time I get the privilege of welcoming a new police officer and administering the oath of office for Alexis Dirksen. So Alexis, if you could join me up front here. The oath of office is up there. You can just read off of that, but if you'd raise your right hand and go ahead.
I, Alexis Dirksen, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my ability, discharge all duties of the office of police officer in the City of Pella, County of Marion, State of Iowa, as now and hereafter required by law.
Congratulations and welcome. Thanks for coming, all of you. She had a big fan club. All right, we'll move on. I would like to reappoint Jerry Brummel to the Community Development Committee. He has served on the CDC since 2004, attended 13 of the 27 meetings that were held during his current term. If approved, Jerry's new 3-year term will expire on August 1 of 2029. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved. Support.
Van Strylen, Vanstra, any discussion?
You say 13, 27.
13 and 27 in his last 3-year term. Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Vanstra.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. I'd like to reappoint Dennis Vanderbeek to the Community Development Committee. He has served on the CDC since 2020, attended 24 of the 28 meetings held during his current term. If approved, Dennis's new 3-year term would expire on August 1, 2029. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Van Strylen, Carlstone. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Vanstra.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Motion passed. I would like to reappoint Karen Van Hemert to the Community Development Committee. She has served on the CDC since 2020 and attended 19 of the 28 meetings that were held during her current term. If approved, Karen's new 3-year term would expire on August 1st, 2029. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved. Support.
Vanstra, Van Strylen, any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Vanstra.
Yes.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Motion passed. I would like to reappoint Mark Richards to the Building Code Board of Appeals. Mark attended the one meeting that was held during his current term. If approved, Mark's new 5-year term would expire August 1 of 2031. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support.
Vince Stryland and Carl Stone, any discussion? All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Van Strylen.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
DeAnstruck.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Motion passed. This time we have opportunity for a public forum. Anyone wishing to address council regarding any agenda item, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Anna Rupert, 1104 Peace Street. At the last City Council meeting, Councilwoman Brandenhorst encouraged residents to do their own research on the Imagine More Urban Renewal Project in the Senate File 2472. I took you up on that invitation, and after reviewing the city's own documents, I came away with one fundamental question. Has the city demonstrated that this project truly justifies public investment through tax increment financing? Let me be clear, I support the important role Central College plays in our community. My concern is not with Central investing in its campus. My concern is whether taxpayers should be asked to subsidize that investment through TIF. The staff memo states that this project will help meet Pella's housing needs, but the 2024 Marion County Housing Assessment tells a more nuanced story. While Marion County as a whole is projected to need 543 additional rental units, the Pella submarket specifically projects a demand for only 279 rental units through 2035. The same study identifies Pella's greatest housing needs as senior housing and owner-occupied homes, and it notes that projected rental demand has declined since the 2016 assessment. So my question is this: if Pella's projected need for 279 rental units, how does a proposal for approximately 1,350 rental units justify the use of public financing? I also reviewed the blight assessment supporting this urban renewal area. The initial assessment focused primarily on deteriorated Central College Dome buildings. The consultant stated that it was not apparent that those conditions were having a significant impact on the surrounding neighborhood. When the city later requested that the assessment area be expanded, the consultant cautioned that enlarging the area could have a watering down effect on the findings. I would appreciate a clearer explanation of how those expanded boundaries were determined and how the final assessment should be interpreted. Finally, beginning January 1st, 2027, changes to Iowa's TIF law will prevent newly created urban renewal areas from capturing school property levies and EMS levies. Approval before the end of this year preserves the city's current ability to capture those levies for this project. Given the long-term impact on taxpayers, I believe residents deserve a transparent discussion about whether those upcoming changes have influenced the timing of this proposal. As the city considers borrowing against future tax revenues to support a project of this magnitude, I hope it has also carefully evaluated the long-term cost of additional infrastructure, utilities, and municipal services this development will require. Growth should strengthen our community financially, not leave future taxpayers with greater obligations than anticipated. Urban renewal is ultimately about stewardship. It asks us to look beyond today's opportunity and consider tomorrow's responsibility. Stewardship means investing public dollars wisely. It means preserving neighborhoods, not just creating them, protecting housing quality, and planning for long-term sustainability, not just short-term growth. If we're going to invest public resources in a project of this scale, we should be confident not only that we're building enough housing, but that we're building the right housing, maintaining it responsibly, and ensuring this public investment remains an asset for the community for decades to come. So I simply ask that you approach this decision with careful stewardship it deserves. Thank you. And I have some documents, all my research and paperwork here for you to review.
Anyone else?
Kathy Dow, 625 Highway T14. I would like to speak tonight about the blight assessment for the Imagine More Urban Renewal area. The segment assessment mentioned earlier makes it less obvious that many of the surveyed properties are rentals. A map created using Google Maps and Beacon ownership records shows that within a roughly 3-block area, only 8 homes are privately owned. Nearly every other residential property is a rental owned by Central College. Over the past several years, Central has also demolished, sold, or donated numerous properties that had fallen into such poor condition they were no longer practical to rent. The Boardwalk House and the Prince House are 2 examples that were ultimately preserved and rehabilitated by the Pella Preservation Trust, rather than remaining in Central's housing inventory. The city's 2014 comprehensive plan describes Pella's housing stock as overwhelmingly in excellent condition, with no concentrated areas of poor housing. Yet just 12 years later, we're being told the same neighborhood now contains a concentrated area where nearly 40% of properties meet the criteria for blight. I would like to point out again that most of the properties looked at in the blight assessment are owned by Central. As an aside, Pella already outranks neighboring counties in the numbers of rentals versus homeowners. According to the most recent census numbers, rentals account for almost 38% of housing in Pella. Another 1,300 rental units do not help us with the need for senior housing, nor home ownership, which were the top 2 needs outlined in the 2024 Marion County Housing Needs Assessment. If deferred maintenance contributed to today's blight, then I hope the council will ask whether this urban renewal proposal addresses the underlying cause of that problem, or simply expands the same housing model on a much larger scale. At the same time, Iowa's recent property tax changes increase the tax burden on many apartment properties. Those additional costs can place pressure on rental affordability over time. As we consider adding approximately 1,300 new rental units, I hope we're also considering how those homes will remain affordable, well-maintained, and financially sustainable for decades to come. Because the question before us isn't simply whether we can build more housing, it's whether we can ensure that today's investment doesn't become tomorrow's blight. Urban renewal should solve the conditions that created blight, not simply recreate them on a larger scale. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Harry Ehrlich, 725 Countryside Lane. I also want to talk on item G1, but I want to keep it focused on TIF. And my concerns, really, I've been averse to TIF for a lot of different reasons, unless specifically, justified, if you will, economically within the city. I would like to thank the staff for putting up the PowerPoint on early, because it gave me some insight that corrected how I was going to comment to the council. But I did participate in the training, or if you will, the session last week by the legal counsel, Mr. Overby, and it was very informative. And my concerns consolidate on one thing. The URP calls for up to $48 million of incentives over a 23-year period. And if those are financed, that becomes $77 million. And will the project generate that kind of property tax revenue? Maybe possibly the staff have done analysis to be comfortable that it may. Those decisions will be made down the road as pointed out by staff. But my concern is whether or not this whole project should be one TIF, or, as was discussed on that training, possibly sectioned into several TIF areas so that they are not encumbered, if you will, or influenced by the entire development. And the reason for my thinking that out loud is I would like to have the staff comment as to whether that was considered. And secondly, if the council were to proceed with the second and third reading, whether or not the TIF could be amended in going into the future. My sense was from the presentation that after January 1, that may not be possible. So whatever you do now is going to have to put into structure what you're probably going to be doing going forward. So consider that, please. It's a major commitment, if you will, at least a direction. The second part of the comment is when you build, or they build all of this, how are we going to serve it if all the property taxes are committed to incentives and to debt service? We're talking 10-20% increase in the population of the city, commercial development, etc. I would like to see it happen, but I also would want to make sure that we have the resources available to support it going forward. The police officers, the fire department, the ambulance, community services, etc., that are generally paid out of property tax. And if there's no more property tax coming out of this large segment of development, where's it going to come from? It's going to come from other property tax payers. Thank you for your consideration.
I live at 1110 Peace Street. Got just really a couple quick short questions. One of them is, as I look at the renewal plan, the urban renewal plan, I'm wondering how the decision was arrived to leave certain residents there, and what that decision was, why to leave those residents in those places, and then also what the effect that's going to have, this whole project with the rentals on the property values of those few that are remaining. And then the last one is more so on a groundwater issue over there. I live at 1110 Peace Street, and like I said, my sump pump runs all the time. Even when it's dry, the only time it's been dry, I think it was finally dry one day, right before it rained. So it runs all the time. There's a groundwater issue in that area, and so my question is, I'm wondering what the effects that these additions will have on that groundwater, and if there's going to be any plans to run tile or something, because when I did ask the city and they came down, they agreed that there needs to be a tile run, and it needs to run all the way down to the end, down past Central's parking lot. So it has to be run a considerable distance, and there's a considerable cost. But there's a groundwater issue there. Right now, my house is pumping the groundwater for that whole area, because when they removed the house right beside me, that house and that basement was full of water all the time. Then when they took the house out, they just changed the grade. They changed the grade, and they changed it so it runs to the southwest corner. So it now cascades over my driveway and then back out onto the street. So my questions are around that groundwater issue, what effect it's going to have on the property owners and the values that are left, and then also how the choices were made. Why did you decide to leave those properties where they were? Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one jumping up, we will move on. Can I get a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Ms. Stryland, Carlstone, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Dan Stryland.
Yes.
Carlstone.
Yes.
Danstruck.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Motion passed. This time we'll have a discussion about the Indoor Recreation and Aquatic Center change order summary. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. For those in attendance and those watching at home on Pella TV, I'd like to direct your attention to the big board for a presentation on this item. And for this item, I'd actually like to turn the floor over to Mr. Bob Veenstra for an update on the Pella Rec Center. So, Bob.
Before we get into the change orders, maybe I'll just bring you up to date on what's happening in construction. We're just pretty much inside the rec center. The outside shell is pretty much done. They haven't really picked up the outside site work a lot, but they'll see that pick up in the near future. Inside the rec center, we'll kind of look at it in three areas. In the pool area, which is that west half of it, the competition pool is pretty well constructed. They're working on mechanical and electrical in that part of it. Work is just beginning on the recreation pool, which is at the northwest corner of the building. So that work is progressing. In the gymnasium, they're primarily working on electrical and mechanical. The track up in the upper level is poured. It still has a dirt floor. They've got a lot of work they've got to do in that area before they put the floor in. In the center core area, most of the block walls are in. They're starting to frame in a lot of the interior walls, and a lot of the electrical and mechanical is progressing and should be finishing up here probably sometime in August. We're going to start seeing some sheetrock going up here in the near future. So that center core area is going to take shape over the next 30 to 60 days. So that's kind of where we are. A little bit about schedule. If we were to go back a year ago after we got through the dirt issue and some of the other issues that we had at the beginning of the project, the projection was that they would turn the facility over to the city sometime about the third week of July of 2027. The winter wasn't the kindest to us, and they slipped back, and if we were to look at, say, the 1st of April, that completion date had actually slipped back into like September or early October. But Stahl has adjusted their schedule, become more focused, and they've now pulled the schedule back to where they're now anticipating the turnover will be that third week of July. So any slippage they had through the winter, they've now made up. And the way they've made that up is that they've really focused and making sure that subcontractors don't get in each other's way. One of the problems in a building project is when you've got 10 or 12 subcontractors working, sometimes they have a tendency to get in each other's way and trip over each other. So Stahl has done a really good job of focusing work. You work over here, you work over here. When they're done, you can come over here. They've really kind of taken charge of that, and that's really helped move the schedule forward. During the past month, we had 2 change orders. One was 2 changes, over $18,000 to $19,000 increase. The other was the kind we like, which is a $12,000 decrease. So the net change over the past month was between $6,000 and $7,000. The council last authorized the project management committee increase their authority for change orders from $200,000 to $300,000, or an increase of $100,000. There's still about $84,000 left in that, so we're not in any kind of danger. And as I indicated the last 2 times I was here, the change orders are slowing down. They're getting smaller as we get inside, and we're dealing with small coordination issues, not really bigger issues. We do have a couple of things that are pending. They're not big things. They've been kind of kicking around for a while. We did have an issue the last month or so, but I think we've got that resolved. So right now, I think we're kind of back on schedule for finishing up about the third week of July of next year. And the changes have kind of settled in where we're probably going to have 1 or 2 a month for the next while. And then that's going to probably dribble on through the project. And some of those are changes that just coordination issues. We're going to probably move in as we go forward in the project. We're likely to find some more city-related changes as people begin to see what the inside of the building looks like. That's a better time sometimes when people visualize, oh, could we do this a little differently or that a little differently? So I anticipate sometime as the shell, particularly that center core area, fills out over the next month or 2, if we're going to have changes increase, they're going to be ones that you have the discretion whether you want to do or not. They're sort of, this would be nice, but not necessary. So far, most of ours have been, we've got to do it. So that's kind of where we are on the indoor rec center project. Things are progressing along pretty much on schedule. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions for Bob? All right, we'll move on. Resolution number 7098, title resolution approving the assignment and assumption agreement between the Raycom Corporation and the City of Pella for the assignment of a tower lease and related lease amendments with XL Towers. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As Mayor DeWart stated, what this resolution would do is approve an assignment of a lease from Raycom to the City of Pella for a tower lease, and this tower lease is necessary to support the city's radio and public dispatch system that we have. And I believe the tower that we're talking about is It's on Highway 160, just north of Highway 163 and just west of 250th Avenue, or the County Line Road, for reference on this as well. It is important to note that when we did approve our contract with Raycom, the assignment that we're approving this evening was a part of the contract on this as well. And again, what this simply does is it assigns the lease on the tower from Raycom to the City of Pella. Very important to note, the city attorney has reviewed this agreement, and we are recommending approval this evening. So with that, Mr. Mayor, be happy to answer any questions the council may have on this item.
All right, thank you, Mike. Can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Manstra, Carlstone, any discussion? Alan?
Just to reiterate that there's no other financial obligation with this.
When we, with the financial obligation, the annual tower lease, which is what we had factored in the city's budget as part of this lease when we approved the project, is about $17,000 per year on it. So that's already been factored in, but
Okay.
there's no additional charges on that.
Okay.
So.
Okay, anything else? All right, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeAnstruck?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Dan Stryland?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Motion passed. Resolution number 7099, entitled Resolution Approving Change Order Number 2, Final Quantity Adjustment and accepting the public improvements for the West Washington Street and Iowa 163 northbound ramp intersection improvements project. Mike?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to explain this item. As Mayor DeWart stated, what this resolution will do is accept the public improvements for the west interchange, public improvements that we had constructed over this past year. And specifically, when you look at Washington Street and the northbound exit to Highway 163, the city installed traffic signals as well as the turn lanes associated with the project. Now, as council is aware, on this project, the contract was performed by TK Concrete, and the change order that we're considering this evening is a change in quantities, the final adjustment. So what we're simply doing is we're reconciling between what was actually bid for the project and the quantities that were placed in the ground. In this case, we have a final contract adjustment of $4,554. So with that, we started off with the contract just shy of $545,100. Council order to accept this resolution with the public improvements this evening, as well as change order number 2. We'd be left with the final contract amount of $553,038.05. So with that, staff is recommending approval this evening. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions the council may have on this item.
All right, can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Support.
Manstra and Stryland, any discussion?
I hear a lot of comments as to why they didn't make that right lane wider. So we have a straight ahead lane and a right turn. Wow, have I gotten that question a lot.
Well, I hope to be able to give you some good news in that regard. We will be adding some concrete along there over the next couple of weeks. So we would ask, however, that the citizens not drive through the concrete until it's fully set. That helps. Thank you.
Thanks, Wilf. Any other questions? All right, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
DeAnstruck?
Yes.
Dan Stryland?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Moving on to ordinance number 1090, entitled an ordinance providing that general property tax is levied and collected each year on all property located within the Imagine More Community Urban Renewal Area in City of Pella, County of Marion, State of Iowa, by and for the benefit of the State of Iowa, City of Pella, County of Marion, Pella Community School District, and other taxing districts be paid to a special fund for payment of principal and interest on loans, monies advanced to, and indebtedness, including bonds issued or to be issued, incurred by the city in connection with the Imagine More Community Urban Renewal Area, the Imagine More Community Urban Renewal Plan. This is the second reading. Mike?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I want to submit a motion that we table this ordinance until the first meeting in November for many of the reasons that we've heard.
Support?
All right, so we have a motion made and supported by Butler, supported by Van Strylen to table the second reading. Not sure, I need some clarification how that works with ordinance changes with second and third readings.
I think that is on the phone, Mike. Do you want to?
Yeah, we could probably ask Nathan too, but what we had also asked is before the presentation that we have this evening too. And we would like to say that we also have the city's bond attorney, Nathan Overberg, the same individual that gave the presentation for Iowa State University last week, is on the phone this evening. So.
Okay, let's walk through this and then we'll talk to Nathan, see what the correct procedure.
Okay. All right. As background on this, once again, I'd like to refer everyone's attention to the big board on this, but what we have here is a second reading of the proposed TIF ordinance for the Imagine More Urban Renewal Plan. And as background, council did approve the urban renewal plan on July 7th of this year. A little bit of background on the plan. This particular urban renewal plan would be the city's second ever urban renewal plan that involves blight elimination specifically. And in the case of the urban renewal plan that we are considering this evening, what we're hoping to do is eliminate blight through economic development and redevelopment of portions of the Central College campus. So some further background, Central College has evaluated their housing needs. They believe that some of their buildings are no longer needed to support their campus student housing, and they could be used for general development within the city. These same buildings were recently reviewed by an outside consultant that was Simmering and Corey that identified the Central College campus on there. And roughly 40% of the buildings that they did review on there did show elements of blight and are considered blight on it. So when we look at Iowa law and blighted urban renewal plans, the threshold is about 25% when it comes to actual buildings. In this particular case, we have 40% of the buildings were noted as blighted. Now, furthermore, when we talk about redevelopment in the city's housing needs, overall the Marion County housing assessment was somewhere right around 1,300 total housing units needed in the city, roughly through the year 2035. As a part of that, one of the key strategies is to make that happen would be consideration of areas that could be redeveloped in the future. And that's simply one of the items is to take advantage of existing public infrastructure in the areas. That's a significant cost savings for the city of Pella if we could use existing public infrastructure. And it's probably the number one barrier that I see, at least from an economic development purpose, when you talk about new economic development areas. There's a significant cost in extending public infrastructure. So this would be water mains, sanitary sewer mains, streets. A lot of the public infrastructure in this case is currently right around the Central College or located through the Central College campus or already provided. So let's go ahead, please, Heidi. Now the ordinance that we're considering this evening creates the legal mechanism to capture future incremental property taxes if taxable development ever occurs on the property. So you got to have development before the ordinance would ever go into effect. Now, how ordinances could go into effect if council were to approve a development agreement, and we're actually going to walk through an example of what would occur in the normal development process for this particular urban renewal plan. So that's going to be here very soon discussed. But if council were to approve a future development agreement, there's also roughly $22 million of public infrastructure included in these plans, and most of the public infrastructure that's included in these plans is going to need to be done sometime in the next 20 years, which is approximately the same lifespan as this urban renewal district on it. Council chooses to finance any of those public improvements with, again, TIF or tax increment financing. That could trigger it. The issue of debt to fund the public improvements could trigger it. But once again, the key theme is in order for this ordinance to go in, council is going to have to either approve a development agreement or future public improvements that are listed in this plan. So please keep that in mind. I also want to state the ordinance adoption does not obligate the city of Pella to complete the plans and the projects on it. That's one of the key things we got to keep in mind. A good way to look at urban renewal plans is they're planned on a comprehensive basis. They're long-term concept plans over the next 23 years. But the reality is, if you're ever going to have projects that take place in those urban renewal plans, they're constructed incrementally, and each and every one of those projects would be a separate consideration by the city council. It would be a separate vote by the city council. And we're going to go through that here just in a bit. But in essence, for this ordinance to take place or to go into effect, these things need to occur. And this is not only the case with the Central College Plan, but it's for any TIF district the city does. First of all, there'd have to be significant taxable development to create enough property tax revenues to be able to do anything in the first place. If you don't have property tax revenues, you can't activate a TIF ordinance. It doesn't occur on it. Most of the property in this urban renewal plan is currently tax exempt. So for something to occur in the ordinance to go into effect, You would have to have redevelopment on the Central College campus with property tax values on that as well. Second of all, the council would have to approve a separate development agreement or public improvement project and use tax increment financing revenue. And then the third thing is, after those two things would occur, the city would have to certify the debt to the county auditor to initiate the TIF district. Now, based on Iowa law, TIF districts are limited to 23 years on this as well. So it's been my experience, and this is somewhat of a unique TIF district on it. Most urban renewal plans and certifications of the ordinance, the certification that actually activates the ordinance doesn't occur until 3 to 5 years after the urban renewal plans already approved by the city council, because you have to have a physical asset constructed first, and then you also have to have tax increment revenues to build upon it. Keep in mind that if you have 23 years and the clock starts ticking at the certification, it makes no sense to activate an ordinance before you have taxable valuation. That's why it's 3 to 5 years, and it may be even longer on this project, depending on when development would actually occur. So let's go ahead, please, Heidi. I thought it'd be helpful to kind of look at the city's development process comprehensively on it, just to kind of gear the discussions to what we're actually considering this evening. The first item to keep in mind is urban renewal plans are just that, they're plans. They're a comprehensive plan, it's a long-term plan, it's over 23 years, it does not obligate the city to anything. Usually what happens with urban renewal plans is council designates an area of our community that they're looking for future economic development on it. In this case, the area was noted as having blighted properties. What we're hoping to do is eliminate blight through economic development. That is the first step of the plan. Now, as far as public input, what we're really here talking about this evening is a plan, a comprehensive plan on it. At that meeting for the urban renewal plan, the Planning and Zoning Commission considered this plan, and they considered it simply whether it aligns with the city's comprehensive plan. The answer to that is the commission felt it did. That was one public meeting. Council on this, the urban renewal plan, with this is the initial step in the development here. We held a public meeting, and in addition, there's possibly, in general, of urban renewal plans, there could be 2 to 4 meetings on it right now. So we're either at our second or third meeting as far as this item that we've talked about. This is the first step. So keep in mind, plans are comprehensive, they're on a long term, but if you're gonna do anything, each and every single project that could happen here is done on an incremental basis, and it's subject to a separate vote, and it has to pass muster at the time, and it has to be needed by the City of Pella, and it's gonna have to be economically justified as well. So let's talk about if we actually had a project on this, and this process would be repeated several times depending on how many projects there were. So there's no one and done on anything on this plan. So if we had a project, let's say one of these buildings was redeveloped into a taxable entity, the very first thing that we would likely start off with was a rezoning of the project. And when that rezoning would occur, you'd actually have a project where someone is proposing to do something on it. The rezoning for the city involves an extensive amount of public input on this. The Planning and Zoning Commission would hold a public input session on this, or a public hearing on it as well. They'd also look at the rezoning and how it aligns with the city's comprehensive plan as well. In addition, with the Planning and Zoning Commission, is we'd send neighbor notifications out to each and every neighbor within 200 feet of the property that's being rezoned on it. So there'd be neighbor notifications. We'd advertise in the paper for it as well. Once we had the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission on that, that's when the item would move back up to the City Council. We would repeat the process at the City Council so that we'd have another public hearing. And for the council, since this would be an ordinance change, you'd have up to 3 more public readings on this item too. So there'd be a significant amount of public input on this as well. At the council for the public input, just in case we missed you the first time on the Planning and Zoning Commission, we'd send out those same notifications once again to the same neighbors on it as well. So again, keep in mind the rezoning process is extensive on it. And that's where you talk about the land use compatibility issues. If there's environmental concerns on the project, those would all be vetted out during the rezoning process. Now let's take a step back. Let's assume, for argument's sake, up here that the project was actually rezoned for the project. Again, this is what someone is going to do, was rezoned by the Pella City Council on that. Then you'd move into the development agreement stage. And at that point, you would have, if the project is requesting public investment, We have a process that we've established and adopted a public, or actually a policy for economic development incentives, but the long and short of it is the need needs to be justified and the public benefit needs to also be expressly stated as well. Those meetings would again be public meetings, and before it would even get to the city council as far as any type of recommendations on economic development incentives, we would have our economic development review committee. That would be a public meeting where we would discuss the details. That was turned over the justification. The committee would make a recommendation to the city council. Once it was up at the city council, that same development agreement would require a public hearing on this as well as a resolution, and they would consider that the council through the committee's recommendation on economic development incentives. But again, the whole policy is based off public input. So let's assume a development agreement was approved and you actually have a project. Most likely, if we're talking about the campus renewal and there's some sort of multifamily housing that's being proposed in the future, sometime in the next 23 years, what you would actually have at that time is a site plan. And I didn't put the site plan up here as well. That's a separate project where you look at the building being constructed, what are all the city's regulations that we would have. It would go in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Our engineers would review it, city staff would review it. We'd look at traffic circulation, we'd look at stormwater concerns on it. They would have to meet all city regulations. If they received a site plan approval, then they could build the project. And after all that takes place for the initial project, sometime through about 3, maybe 2 to 3 years after the site plan approval, and depending on how fast the building gets built, we would actually certify the ordinance that we're considering this evening. So the takeaway is this is a very comprehensive process. What we are discussing this evening is simply a plan. It doesn't obligate the city to anything. If we're talking about spending city funds, those will be individual votes, they will be public, they will be justified, and they're going to be based on the needs of the city at that time. So, Mayor, before I go on, is there any questions on the city's development process? I have 2 more slides after this too.
Okay.
One
Anybody?
question, have we ever had a TIF project with leased housing?
With leased housing?
Leased housing, rental housing?
Yeah, I can't say that we have, but that doesn't mean it couldn't occur in the future. And so, with it, Mr. Van Stryland, I would say the answer is no on leased housing, but keep in mind, when we talk about redevelopment, we don't get into those types of details with the urban renewal plan. So what actually occurs sometime in the future could be something different than leased housing. And I do have an example here of the other blight district that we have previously approved as well. So I'll make sure I address that as well.
Well, I'd make a comment. Mr. Nardini, you've done a good job of explaining the process. It's a long, convoluted process, of course. Many points at which it seemed like it could be stopped on individual projects. However, tonight and I don't know where this is going to go for sure, but at our ward meeting last Tuesday, there was a lot of questions about what Central's doing. And many questions over this ordinance. And it just seems to me that we have time to get this done before the end of the year and to stay inside the current law, that we don't need to be in a too big a hurry. I was encouraged to not be in a big hurry. We've heard from 3 or 4 people tonight about different issues in the area, different needs in the area. It just seems to me that we need to step back and learn more. I also think, and I can't tell Central College what to do, but I think it would be a good idea, and I've heard this from others, for them to have a town hall meeting and at a convenient time, well advertised on their property, and sell this project to the public. If the public buys in, this will go great. But if there's resistance at every turn along the way, not a good deal. See what I'm saying? So this ordinance here, it's fine. I understand what it does, but I think the public, from what I've heard, would be more comfortable having an opportunity to learn more about it before we, and this is, like I said, we're maybe 3 to 5 years away from implementing this, but nevertheless, they just wanna know more about it. I think if you get the public to buy into this project, you got a good deal. If not, again, I don't know I don't know what'll happen. So that's why I want a delay to the 1st of November. We still have 4 meetings to get it done. So, anyway, we don't even know what the
Point taken,
procedure is.
Mr. Bud. All right, I
Can
have
you
two
finish?
slides.
Yeah, you
Yes, sir.
finish, and
I'm
then,
sorry.
then
Okay.
we'll ask Nathan to
Okay.
talk about this. I wanna know the tabling, how that works, and also, and then I got a lot of comments, but I'll wait till I
Okay.
get done.
All righty, yes, sir, I'll try to be brief and appreciate the comments that we have on it. So let's go ahead. Again, there's an elongated process. This is the very first step, and what you're really talking about is a plan on it as well. Individual projects will be vetted out, there'll be an extensive process on that as well. Now, we do have a little bit of background on urban renewal plans that are been deemed blighted. And we have some members, I guess this evening it would have been Councilmember Van Stryland that were on council when we approved this, and I believe the majority of the members on council were on portions of this project as well. But this would have been the Webster Park urban renewal plan that we had. And so when you talk about urban renewal and TIF, there's a lot of, I think, comments in Iowa about it. You don't hear a lot of positives with it, but this is one that I think is a positive for our community, and I just want to state that this is the second district that we've considered blight. We had one prior to this, and so with our urban renewal plan, if you were to look at this would be the area just south of the new Casey's on Main Street. I call it new. It's been in existence almost 10 years now, so it's not that new. But before that, I wanted to share what some of the pictures that we had that were in that area, and this area was deemed as a blighted area. The first picture that we have in the upper left-hand corner was a big yellow house that stood on the corner for the city that caused some issues with code enforcement. We had some dilapidated concerns with the community on dilapidated housing in this area that we had. And just south of there on it, if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, was the former Webster School building. And most people don't know at the time when that project was redeveloped, that property was owned by Central College. And Central College owned the property. They owned it as their maintenance building on it. So when we looked at redevelopment of this area, again, this is on the city's, just south of the city's downtown on the Main Street corridor that we had on it. We did the same process that we're talking about this evening. So this would have been sometime in 2017, we started it, where we went with the blight assessment, talked about what could take place on this area, approved the urban renewal plan, but it's basically, this urban renewal plan is 3 acres right here and is this diagonal area. So through urban renewal, we have 2 projects that took place that are redeveloped that if you drive down to Main Street, I would view as a positive for the community. The first one that we have in the upper right is the Main Street Market. That's where the yellow house was. It was right here. The second one is when we look at the Webster School, the old Webster School, that's the current location of the South Main housing development that we have. Webster School was a tax-exempt property since it's been building and construction inception. It was owned by the Pella Community School District. Then Central College took ownership with it, and we were very fortunate that Central College was willing to work with the city and redevelop a portion of their property for development for the community good. But when you look at it, look at the development agreements that we have and the total investment cost of the development agreements, it was somewhere at north of $20 million for the community on it. So I would state that the process has worked before, and these would be good examples of urban renewal and blighted areas that we have. And these are 2 good examples of the process actually working to the benefit, what I would say, to the community as well. And I just wanted to make sure the council is aware of it, that these things take a long time to plan, implement, but there's quite a process involved in each one of them as well. So I'll wrap up here. My last slide that I have on here is, again, I want to state adoption of the ordinance doesn't obligate the city to do anything on it as well. It simply provides the council with the option to use TIF in the future should the council choose to do so. And in summary, Mr. Mayor, after looking at everything, considering everything, we are recommending approval this evening, and I'll respectfully answer any questions directed to me, but we do have the city's bond council on, or not bond council, our economic development council, which would be Nathan Overberg as well. So if there are questions for Nathan, please please feel free to direct them to him.
Nathan, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can. So in our packet, council packet, we had a letter from you that tried to explain, because I think one of the big issues here is there's a whole lot of misunderstanding what's actually going on here. You provided us with a letter that was pretty clear in describing what we're actually doing with this if we adopt this urban renewal area. Could you kind of review that, what actually is happening with the adoption of, if we would adopt this ordinance to establish this urban renewal area?
Certainly. So we'll start. Mike covered most of this very well, and so kudos to you, Mike. The urban renewal plan, which you have already adopted by resolution, is just that, a plan that identifies an area and potential projects that the city could elect to do in the future. And by adopting that plan, you open essentially the toolbox in Chapter 403, which is the urban renewal law. It doesn't mean you have to take a single tool out of that toolbox. It just means that the toolbox is there and you've opened it. That's what you've done by adopting the plan. You've identified an area where you think you could utilize some of those tools, and you've identified some projects you may want to work on in the future. The step tonight is the tax increment ordinance, and it is one of those tools. It allows or instructs the county auditor that if in the future the city were to identify a project, approve that project, incur costs for that project, and then certify those costs to the county would then be instructed under the ordinance to divide incremental taxes and put some of those taxes into your TIF fund to help spend or help reimburse the cost of these urban renewal projects. So the TIF ordinance is just laying the groundwork, and that would allow you to utilize TIF in the future. As Mike explained in his slide, it does not start the TIF process. That will not occur until you actually approve the project, incur debt for that project, and then certify that debt to the county. And so this is the step in the process where you would be approving a TIF ordinance that you would then send to the county auditor, and they would know that if in the future, if you were to ever take those additional steps, you will have laid the groundwork to allow you to utilize tax increment financing. So that's where you are in the process. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, Mike covered most of that, but I believe that's the information I provided in my letter.
All right, thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just Nathan, this is Calvin Banster talking here, just to be clear, I think sometimes this wording here even confuses me. When it says adopt a TIF ordinance for the urban renewal plan, we are not adopting any TIF project, right? It gets under the label of a TIF ordinance.
That is correct.
And I think, I guess even myself, I got to think back, it's really the urban renewal area that we're approving of the possible TIF project that we might have, even though TIF ordinance, I think, is the common verbiage that we use. I just want to make sure I'm not wrong on that.
Right, that's a common, no, you're exactly right. And it's a common misunderstanding. People often use urban renewal and tax increment financing interchangeably, and that's not really right. Okay. You adopt an urban renewal plan by resolution, which you folks have already done at your last meeting. And it's that adoption of the urban renewal plan that identifies some projects in an area and says you may use urban renewal tools in the future if you want to.
Okay, thank you.
You could adopt an urban renewal plan and never ever use tax increment financing. Yep.
So I don't know if this is a fair question for you or not. We have a motion to table. When we get into the reading of ordinances and we're into the second reading of this ordinance, second vote on this ordinance, now we have a motion on the floor to table this. Is that, can we do that, or can you, maybe you can't even answer that, I don't know.
It's a fair question. Unfortunately, under the code, you could potentially do that. There's nothing in the code that says you have to do all 3 readings in sequential meetings, as long as you don't have a no vote on one of those readings. So you could potentially take a vote on an ordinance, skip a meeting, then take the second reading, take a vote on the ordinance, skip a meeting, get to the third, and have the third reading. That would be consistent or okay under the code. Again, as long as you don't have an actual vote on one of the readings and have a no vote. Because if you have a no vote in any of the readings, then that stops the process, kind of ends the process on that ordinance. The question about the motion to table based upon your local rules of order, I am not familiar with those. I apologize. I did pull them up while the conversation was going on. I don't see that that is clearly covered. And if it's not clearly covered, your rules say it comes down to the mayor with the advice of city council on how to kind of run the rules. So that's my best answer I can give you on that. It is a little bit unusual in my experience. Usually the readings kind of flow one after the other. I do know that the code doesn't require you to have it one after the other, as long as you don't have a no vote. And then I'm not seeing anything in my quick read of your council's rules that tells me that the motion is out of order. But I probably lean a little bit on Mandy and Mike and you, Mayor, with a little more experience in running your meeting. How about that?
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Nathan, this is John Butler. And my question is, can you explain this no vote thing? I always thought it was the majority of the council had to vote yea or nay.
Well,
that's correct.
If we vote no,
So by no vote, I meant a majority voting no. You're right.
Not one no vote.
Not an individual.
If the council would vote no on the second reading,
Yeah.
it dies.
Yeah.
That's what
would kill it.
that would
Correct.
kill.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So I just didn't want one no vote to do it.
No.
So, okay, I think I understand.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. So I think based on the comments I heard from the public, I think there's a pretty significant misunderstanding of what we're actually doing here. As I've heard, obligating future taxpayers. I've heard in one comment was groundwater retention and all those things. We're not doing any of that with this. All this does is establish the urban renewal area. So right now, as I was thinking through this, I think we have 5 active TIF housing projects in Pella right now. Prairie Ridge Phase 1 was a TIF project, but Marion County fronted the infrastructure for the developer and is now collecting the TIF revenue off of all those new houses to pay back their bond, because they actually did upfront money. Boss Ridge is an active TIF, but that is a reimbursement as property taxes are being collected, and so the City of Pella has no debt on that, no obligation. The obligation is to reimburse the developer as property tax revenues are collected. We approved Prairie Ridge 2. That's the same situation. When the property taxes are started to be generated for those houses, The developer is entitled to $27 or whatever the TIF is as reimbursement for infrastructure for 15 years. Timberview, we approved that, but we did give them $500,000 up front. And so we are collecting, as a city, we are collecting the first $500,000 of TIF revenue back to the city before they get anything for the other infrastructure costs. We approved a TIF resolution for Larry DeVries for the Fountain Hills. And again, no money up front by the city. Those developers are, the developer is reimbursed as property tax revenues. And so the idea that what we would do tonight if we advance this is gonna obligate, it does not obligate the city of Pella to anything. What it does is give us the option, if we would so choose at the time when a project comes forward, to do it or not do it, based on its own merit. Every one of these projects that I've just described were based on their own merit. And in my opinion, they've been incredibly effective. We had a serious housing issue. We are building houses as fast as anybody, and I think the way the city has been involved has been a big positive. We also have the blight urban renewal for the market and for South Main. That was a blight, and same thing. The property tax generated by the market and by all those condominiums, those property taxes are going back to the developer. Under those two agreements, there were minimum assessment agreements. So everybody that owns a condo there in the market agreed that they're gonna get minimum assessed at this dollar value, no matter what the market value is. And so, in the same way with the TIF project we did for Smash Park in that area, that urban renewal area, that those properties are tied to a minimum assessment agreement that guarantees that we're gonna get our money back to pay off the $2 million, because we issued a $2 million bond. I'm happy to say that we're collecting more off of those projects than it's costing us. So that's a positive for us. And so I guess I don't understand the reluctance to go through and just establish the plan. I mean, the way the discussion is, you'd think next week this whole project somebody's gonna come in and do. Well, no, it's a huge project, but the thing of it is, one of the biggest challenges to development within a city is land. And land in town, inside of a community, is almost impossible to find. This is a Central College offering up, I think it's what, 38 acres maybe?
Around there.
Around the edge of their campus that can be redeveloped into a community. And I also looked at where the urban renewal is, and because I understand you have to think about how would redeveloping this area affect current residents. So if you look at the plan, there's in the big plan, and again, there's no developer has come forward with anything specific.
Not the urban renewal plan.
Central College is gonna have to go seek a developer to come up with a plan, with a real project. But if you look on Independence Street, where Pete and Paul and Hoffman, which were old dorms, they're no longer used, those are gonna be cleared out of there. And the big high-level plan right now shows apartment buildings there. So you're gonna end up with a building that's exactly the same as what was there before. It's gonna be multi-unit residential. So it's not gonna affect that area any differently than it is now. It's gonna make it look a lot better with a new building. So it's not gonna affect that. The other area where they're talking about in the plan where there's some significant apartment buildings is up on Five Field Road, where the those of us that have been around a long time know the old packing plant and the old noodle factory on Fifield Road. There are no residents there. So there's gonna be no effect to anybody on that neighborhood. When you start coming down I'm always confused in directions around here because nothing's straight. But when you come down the north and the northeast part of the campus and down, now you're talking about being across from some residents. And I know somebody talked about groundwater. I can promise you that anybody that comes to the City of Pella with a project to build anything has to address water, groundwater, whether it's retention ponds or whatever it is. You can't get a site plan approved. So in theory, if that were to develop, probably would take care of your water problem, because any new development would be required to account for the water that a new project would, and it would affect that whole area. Last thing I'm going to say, I was invited to a meeting along with family leadership of Pella Corporation, Vermeer Manufacturing, Hospital, PPI, PACE Alliance. We met as a group. There was probably, how many were there? 20? 20 community members met with the entire Central College board.
The whole board?
The whole board.
35 people?
There were 20 of us, and I mean, some were online, but
Okay.
it was the board's meeting, and so they invited all of us to talk about this project. So we had, family members of our large corporations, leadership at our large corporations, all of the board of Central College. We had, I think, a 2.5-hour conversation. And the only thing that I heard was tremendous excitement for this project, not only from the board of Central College, but from the community that will be affected by it. Because it has the potential. There's nothing, I haven't seen any developer come forward yet. There's no specific plan on the table. But the idea, the possibilities are very exciting, in my opinion, for this community. And, I just saw an article a couple weeks ago. 68 of the 99 counties in Iowa are losing population at a rapid rate. We are in rural Iowa, and we need to keep our nose to the grindstone and keep this community moving forward with projects like this if we're going to be viable for the long term. So.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your comments. You and I understand it. The problem we have is that the general public doesn't understand it. And so that's why, since it's not going to happen fast, whether it happens today or 3 months from now or 2 months from now, is almost immaterial as far as I can tell, that we need to have time to educate. There's got to be an education process for the people, because they vote for us, for one thing. And we are not just to, you had this group of people, that's a very select group of people compared to all the taxpayers in Pella. And a lot of those people don't even live in Pella, so it's easy for them to be excited about something.
Well, they do have a rather large stake in Pella.
Well, they do.
They may not live here, but they do have a rather large stake.
We're hearing that about, anyway, I won't digress on that. But anyway, they have a large stake, they have a big interest. I'm glad to hear that. But I'm just, the reason I went down this trail was just to say, let's just take a couple more months. Let's have Central College and somebody from Central College have a meeting that people can go, that the general public can go to, the guy on the street. Anyway, I think I've said enough. So anyway, there you go.
I think it's better to table it than to have it voted down.
So you're telling me you're going to vote it down?
Well, I don't see any reason why not to table it, because there's not a rush.
What benchmarks are we gonna look for, to John, your comment on having the general public understand? Because a lot of the general public don't, I shouldn't say it this way, but I will, don't care. You know what I mean? Aren't as invested as we are, knowing the nuances of a urban renewal plan, what it is. I don't know what benchmark you set by that. I thought Central did a good presentation for us here. The other thing that I'm a little bit, concerned about is our request to know what the actual plan is, because I don't even think Central knows what the final is gonna be, because if we don't get the developer, or the developer says, I will do this, but not this, that's what, I think back to the Webster project that we were on, and Mike, you might have to help me with this because of my poor memory. We had two-story or multi-story stuff all the way around there. Partway through the plan, it wasn't working. It was, so we changed it to duplex. We had a plan set in front of us that had the drawings of the multi-story thing. So I think asking Central to have an exact plan is going to be impossible. Till the.
I'm not. They have a pretty big plan, big drawings and stuff.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And they just they made it here, but we can see that there's this very small representation of the general public here, and I would just think that they would want to present that to the general public, give them an opportunity. I know there's people that don't care, but there's people that care a lot, and so I can't see what is the benefit of rushing it through. We don't even know all the rules around TIFs going forward. We went to this seminar last Wednesday. I've got all the PowerPoint pages, but it's difficult to just iron it all out. So.
Well, I would push back that we're rushing this through. This is a standard operating procedure. This is exactly how we do ordinance changes. You have a presentation, you talk about it, you have three readings, you go through the whole presentation every time. So we're not doing anything quicker than we've done on any other ordinance change. We've always, in fact, most of the time, we have waived the second and third reading on a lot of ordinances. So I don't see where we're rushing anything through.
Which League of Iowa cities usually do not recommend waiving second and third readings.
Yeah, I would agree, but we do on a regular basis. So, I don't know what you mean by we're rushing it through. Because we're doing it the way we do everything else. Every other time we've had an ordinance change, it's the exact same procedure. But I would agree if
you were, this is Nathan.
Go ahead, Nathan.
This is Nathan. I was just going to have one comment that if you're concerned about procedurally whether you can continue or not, you could approve the second reading tonight, and then when you get to the third reading next week, you get a more firm answer from us whether tabling it is procedurally okay, and then you could review it again next week. Just a suggestion. I don't know, I don't want to throw any uncertainty into your adoption process by not being able to answer your question about whether tabling it now is the appropriate thing. So if you're going to go forward with 3 separate readings, then maybe you prove it tonight and take up the tabling next week. Just a suggestion.
Would we be able to have a legal opinion whether tabling is even legal or okay by then? Because I don't want to table something if we're not supposed to.
You'd have a lot firmer answer than I'm able to give you.
Well, I can sense a little hesitation in that.
Yeah, I would be more comfortable with that.
Okay, so here's the reality of it. There's four members here. I asked. Oh, we didn't ever get to a motion for approval because you put your motion to table out there first. So we still haven't. So unless all four, if we go to the motion to approve this on the second reading, if all four of you don't vote for it, then it's a no vote. I'm not sure about the tabling motion. Does that take four, or is that a majority of here and I would be able to break a tie?
So a motion would be a majority of those present. So if it came to a 2-2, it would be
I could
a
vote.
situation where you would break the tie.
Okay. All right, so
Well,
here's what I'm gonna do. Here's what I
Can
suggest.
talk
Yeah,
first?
yeah.
Is that in light of what the attorney says, I can hold off or I can retract my motion to the next meeting?
Yes, you can withdraw your motion.
Withdraw
on
the
table.
motion, and we'll go to the next meeting and we'll have 2 more weeks to work on it. And,
Does Harold have to retract
I would
his
have to
second too?
retract my second, I guess.
you do that, Harold?
I'll withdraw my,
But I guess I would like, if it's okay with you folks, that we do get a
Third reading.
A third, well, a third, but also an opinion, because if we have to table the third reading, I want to make sure it's legal.
Right.
You know, to do so. I don't know how to satisfy the question on the broader explanation that you would like.
Well,
Because that's kind of on Central, and I can't control them.
No, I can't either, but.
I think, just in fairness, I think Mike did reach out to Central and ask them to, right, Mike?
That is correct.
Ask
Okay.
them to maybe put together some kind of a public
Okay, great.
meeting so that people that have questions could come and listen to their, discuss, what their idea is, yeah.
And the feedback that, Mr. Bannister, that you're looking for will come to you from your constituents. Email, phone calls, on the street. So that's what you'll hear, that's what you'll hear, should be hearing. I hear it, and so that's why I'm where I'm at. I had 60 people at my Ward 2 meeting. We had people from all 4 wards. It was a great thing to do. I would recommend every councilman do it. It's fun. It's actually fun. I had fun.
It feels
Did you
like
have
we're
cookies?
inextricably linking what we've seen in pretty pictures as the final plan that Central has in mind for Imagine More, and this step of making an urban renewal district based on an evaluation of a level of blight. These aren't necessarily inextricably connected. Am I right? We're merely saying that an evaluation of this area that was highlighted has 40% of its buildings blighted. One of the best mechanisms we have as a city jurisdiction is to label that section that we draw our lines around that is blighted as an urban renewal district. We're getting so caught up about the cart from everything we've heard, and I think where everybody's emotions are, we're not even thinking about the horse at all. This is merely about the horse. We'll have years to talk about the cart and to explain and to hear and understand and to voice and to have input on the cart. I am having a hard time understanding the difficulty with just labeling this an urban renewal district. And I think there is a press because of the financial advantage to the city because the laws are changing. And I'm in a business where inaction often isn't beneficial. And this is another one of these, well, I'll just quit smoking in 3 years. When I finally got that lung tumor, you know what I mean? We do have time press only because the law is changing. This is merely feeding the horse, so we can even look at whether we can hook a cart up to it, but we're getting caught on the cart. Is how I see this in what I'm hearing. I do think there's a lot of concern about it, and there should be. We want people to be involved in this process. But that's not this process. This is this blight or not? We had a professional evaluation, 40% of it's blight. That seems to be pretty straightforward to me. And we are doing 3 readings, and that's their chance, that's the public's chance to comment on it. But they're commenting on what the pictures are that they saw, or what the numbers are in the proposal, how many rental units, or, you know, we're just getting caught up way too far down to the what ifs, and not even on what the first step is.
Or we're just thinking into the future.
I hope so, and we should be, but that's not what this vote right now is about.
That's true, but it's a step. So anyway, we've withdrawn our motion. We agree to address this next time. We'll find out from the attorney how that's supposed to work.
Okay.
And go forward.
All right, I want to make sure, well, let's put, so I'm going to ask for a motion of approval for the ordinance, the second reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Support.
Carlstone, Banstra. Now, I want to make sure that everyone has ample time to make comments, if there's any other thing before we vote.
It's not that we didn't understand it.
Okay. All right, with that, we will vote on the motion. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Danstruck?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Van Strylen?
Yes.
Motion passed. I need a motion for approval of abstract of bills 2203.
Move to approve and issue warrants.
Support.
Van Strylen, Banster, any questions? All right, all in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Van Strylen?
Yes.
Danstruck?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Carlstone?
Yes.
Motion passed. Anybody, any council member have any other business you'd like to address? Yes, John.
Well, now that we're into this blight thing real good, the house at 3rd and Franklin needs to be improved or removed. 3rd and Franklin. It's right at the end of Franklin Street.
East Third?
There's a white brick house there that hasn't
Oh,
been lived
oh.
in for years.
Yeah.
It's an eyesore.
Yeah.
And I object to it being there because I live in
Yeah.
one of the nice houses. There's several nice houses up and down that street. New houses even.
Have you talked to the city about it? Because it's got quite a history.
I thought I was talking to it. I
Yeah.
might have a history, but.
I
if
say
it's
there's a
over,
lot of
it's-
history with
yeah,
that house.
Oh,
okay.
does it have a history?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be in touch with Mr.
Mr. Mayor, we'll take a look at that case file on that again, and we'll review the issue and communicate directly with Mr. Butler, Councilmember Butler on that.
There used to be a tree growing right through the house.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And then he painted it and put on a new
Put
roof.
it on a new roof.
I can tell you a lot of things.
Okay, anything else? All right, any member of the public have any other business you'd like to address the council with? If so, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and please, don't make me cut you off. Most of our speakers have not honored the 3 minutes, so please, we've been here a long time already.
Janet Wynn, 1213 Bruce Lane. Mike, thanks for the detail, super helpful. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. I understand the economics of Jeff mostly, as much as a common normal person can, and why the city utilizes them, and I don't disagree with them. But this particular project, as Don said at the first meeting, will give a vote on it gives central reassurance. And so pushing again tonight to vote again for a yes, to give central some reassurance at some level. So they're going to be moving forward at some level with their planning, which, you know, Spencer, you're talking about how this is years and years down the road. Well, Central's actively working. And so we got a lot of stuff to figure out. And we all understand, we get it. I want to echo John's comments though tonight about the importance of public support and transparency throughout this process. We didn't have that with the rec center until there was an election and council turned over, and then everybody had to regroup. And Mr. Mayor, you actually had to sell your project, and you sold it, and you got public support. And I agree that that's how this needs to happen. Learning today that Central already owns a significant portion of the properties, I don't remember what the percentage was you said, that are designated to be blighted. Public perception again. Let's what's the public gonna say about that? I mean, that just sounds bad. It causes maybe the wonder of, did Central let them fall in disrepair? Or are we choosing to blight them? Are they really blightable or not? You know, kind of what maybe is going on behind that. Spencer, you're my councilman. I've sent you a couple emails, no response. My questions for you tonight publicly will be, do you fully understand Central's long-term plan? Have you reviewed the complete site plan? Do you understand the terms of proposed long-term ground leases? Do you know who the developer is? I understand we probably don't, but what their track record is. I understand you're saying we're getting the cart way before the horse. We're not. This is a big deal. If Central has been unwilling or financially unable to maintain the properties that it already owns, what assurance does the public have that this new development will be properly maintained over the long term? If Central simply owns the land and collects the lease payments, which I think is their intent, great idea. But then we have a developer that nobody knows. How do we hold them responsible? If this is low to moderate income housing, probably the care will be less than, you know, what you and I give for our homes. So that's a concern. Developers go out of business every day. We all know that as well. Ultimately, what protections are in place to ensure that the taxpayers are not left bearing the financial burden if this project is not to succeed? I guess the public's questions will be, why doesn't Central sell this land? Mr. Mayor, you talked about how valuable it is to have, Mr. Mayor, you talked about how valuable it is to have land inside city limits. So why aren't they selling it? I'm not saying that they should, just a question the public is probably going to have. We could probably come up with a super fabulous development plan that talks about all of these great things that we need as a city as we want to grow the Pella program from here, and Central would all love. And they can get some cash flow back from simply selling some of this land, some of the houses that are in poor shape, that are gonna be blighted. And then a question that all of us, I think, who really need to consider, and Spencer, you're my guy, is have you given serious thought to what 1,300 low to moderate income rentals in an apartment style situation are going to do to our city? Let's say we have 15,000 people in this town. Let's say there's 3 people in a home. We've got 5,000 households in this town. We have 1,300 rental apartments, low to moderate income. What's that gonna do? So, just things to think about.
Well, I think my only comment is you've asked a whole lot of questions that you need to ask Central, not us.
Yeah, which is why
Yeah,
I'm
so
supporting
please
John's,
reach out,
let's
because
get-
they have answered. I've heard their presentation. They have
But the public
most
has.
of the answers to your
The
questions.
public hasn't.
And you should ask them, not us.
You're my mayor.
Yeah,
You are my council members.
but what, those questions I can't answer.
You can get them all
Because
over.
that is
And you
their
can read the
plan, it's
situation.
their plan, it's their property.
Mr. Mayor,
You need to ask
you're
them.
going to vote on this as a council, as our representatives. Okay? You're part of this. Please do not push me out to Central. Please. Thank you.
2509 Sculptor Strut. One little comment, it bothers me that 40% of the property that Central College has right now is listed as blighted. You know, are they gonna do better? That doesn't seem very good to me. Little status on the Lincoln Street project, what's the status of that?
Well, I live right there, they've got the, I think, what's the street?
First Street.
First Street is open,
First
is open now,
It's
so
open.
they've got about.
It's half board, the intersection is half
Yeah.
board. They're making, Wilf has the answers.
Yeah, Wilf, right there.
Yeah, we have all the underground work done, which was the big barrier there, dealing with all the knitting under the street. And all we have to do in terms of the paving is the second half of the East First intersection, and then the stretch of Lincoln going up to Houston. All of that passed its compaction testing. They're putting in the sub-base and the sub-grade and the sub-drains this week. Depending on weather and how well that goes, we may be pouring yet this week, or it will likely be next week. I would caution that we can't do the seeding until the opening of the DOT seeding season, which is August 10th. But other than that, million.
How long has it been going on?
It's been going on since, I think, it began back in July of last year, and there was an immediate delay because of utility issues. But yes, you're quite right, it went all through the winter, and that was not something we want to see, and it's caused a great deal of disruption for the people who live on there, and that's not something we're particularly happy about either.
I would think so. Yes, the South Main project. I see they've taken all the brick siding off the building. They've put new windows in it. What's the status of that project?
I think we're looking at a completion date on that project of December of this year. So,
And what's the cost of, what's?
we'll have to get that for you, the exact dollar out on that.
Just
Mr.
roughly.
Young. I wanna say, Gerald, 1.4 million.
It seems like maybe we'd have been better off starting over again and building a new building or something. It's been a long project. What about the old power plant area there? Whatever happened to the upgrade we were going to do in that area?
Actually, on that, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like me to answer that
Yeah.
question. We have a committee meeting next week on that project, and what we're hoping to do in the month of August, or it might be September, but we hope to have the concept plan for that park, the Charles Farmer Park that we have. We're hoping to have that in front of the council in August and September, and if we proceed with the project, it could be constructed in 2027 on it. So right now, our final committee meeting scheduled for next week. That'll be a public meeting as well, so it's next Monday. It's either at 12 or at 2. We have 2 meetings on that day, so.
So it's still in the planning
Yes,
stage now?
that is correct, yes.
And we theoretically hope to have it done next year. Is that
That is
correct?
correct. That is correct.
Thank you very much.
John Bannister from rural Mahaska County. I would like to honor Councilmember Butler for organizing a town hall. He showed great leadership in doing that, and also to Councilmember for Van Streisland for being there. They opened up transparency, which is badly needed between the public and the city. They answered such questions as the cost of the airport. And now, and continuing on now for tonight, there's been some questions about tabling an ordinance. Maybe the ordinance should be put back on the agenda for a month or 2 until we can iron out some of the things that would cause it to be tabled. Maybe there needs to be a town hall meeting with the public and the other people involved. And I guess in closing, it was pointed out that without resident buy-in, a project doesn't go well. May I point to the recently filled airport as a classic example of not having public support? Thank you very much for your time.
Karma Ruthven on 300 West 5th Street. I have a couple things. First of all, I'm gonna go back to the post office issue that nobody's answering me in regards to if they could put a couple compact cars in the alley behind the post office that you go in facing east, and then you're on Broadway. And I was on there the other day and I got this close to being creamed by a car. And the car was going fast. Luckily, I was smart enough to make a big whip away, but I've asked and nobody has even contacted me if it's possible to put even 2 compact cars there, because I know parking is limited in this town. But if you put 2 compact cars there, you're gonna be able to see around them versus a truck or a van. So, that's my gripe. Also, I have a question on electric cars. Do we have setups for electric cars in this town? That's labeled that there's a setup at all? Do we
You
have
mean
any?
a recharging station?
Yeah. Do we have any?
I don't know if there are any anywhere.
Yeah,
I don't think we have any that the
There's
city
not a-
has.
There's not a public recharging station, but I can tell you there's a group of citizens along with that have inquired with our electric department, so that's being looked at as well. So-
Well, just kind of wondered, because when people from out of town come, for respect for them, and if they have an electric car, then that puts a dampen in maybe how long they could stay, or, you know, so I just kind of wondered if, because you see them in other towns, and even like in parking lots or something, somewhere.
Mr. Mayor, before Mrs. Ruffin's done, what I would ask, could you go back and give your contact information to Chief Shaggy in the back?
I did.
Okay, all righty.
I sent him my email of my last
I think he wants to
conversation.
comment.
I didn't receive an email, so I'm sorry. I remember us talking about it.
And I
gave you
sent an email
and I
right
said,
away.
Let's connect, so I didn't receive one, so please don't think I'm ignoring you. I just simply didn't receive it.
Thank you.
Hi, Kayla Flanders, I'm a Pella resident too, so I guess 1016 Edgewater Drive. I'm the CFO at Central College, and we've been communicating SLT. Obviously, we've heard a lot of the comments, so just wanted to affirm that we will be happy to host a conversation and invite the community to come and see the plans. I think my 2 cents would be some of the questions around the financing. Those are city matters, and so may ask the city to partner with us, but happy to have a conversation about the long-lived plan that we have in front of us. So just wanted to assure the community that would happen.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Poitink, 2605 Himmel Drive. I live, work in this community, and I am a member of the Central College Board of Trustees. And I will tell you there are over 15 to 20, I believe over 15, nearly 20 trustees who live, work, or own businesses in this community. The people on this board care deeply about this community. We care deeply about the relationship between Central College and this community. What you see, or what President Putnam presented last week, is an opportunity that is generational to revitalize something that has been an asset to this community for years. We are operating in one of the most dynamic industries in the country. Education has never seen what we are dealing with right now, from a demographic stage to a financial, to financial scenarios. What we are trying to do at the college is connect Pella in the community and move it forward. What has been presented is a long-term plan. There are ideas. There are pieces that may work. There may be pieces that need to be revitalized. But it is called Imagine More for a reason. And we'd ask everyone to, I understand there are many questions, but we would ask everyone to imagine what this could look like as a partnership between the community, between the college, and between the alumni. The other comment I would make as an executive at Vermeer Corporation, housing is needed. We bring in over 6,000 people daily into this community to work, people who do not live here. They are looking for this type of housing. This is sorely needed, and this is an opportunity for the college to contribute to the city, and for the city to contribute to the college in a partnership that has long existed. So thank you.
Leanne Hesse, 512 Lincoln Street. I have concerns about you moving forward. Well, there's a lot of people in the public with the Central College urban renewal plan. And I'm not saying I'm totally against it. I'm just saying there's a lot of questions been raised. Mr. Nardini gave a good presentation of if this goes forward, how long this is. There's always going to be public to be able to talk. Well, the public's been talking tonight and we're not all happy about it, and we're just kind of being told we don't understand. I am very happy to hear that Central is willing to have a meeting with the public, those of us us who are concerned, and not just a select people that were invited. So I'm very happy to hear that, because there are concerns that are being raised, and I would appreciate it that when we do talk about things, and if we're not on board for what you are presenting, that you do listen to us, even if what we're saying is no or slow down. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one else, we're gonna move on to our policy and planning, public right-of-way management ordinance. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if we could change up the order tonight,
Okay.
I'd like to go ahead and, with your permission, is to have the stormwater management plan presented. And but Mr. Bob Beanstra takes the podium. Wolf, if you'd like to just do an introduction to the analysis and a little bit of background before you turn the floor over to Bob, please.
Surely. The issue with stormwater, as we've all experienced this spring, is it doesn't always go away the way we want it to. It hangs around and creates problems. We've been aware of this. We asked Mr. Beanstra to put together a plan for the city, and he's going to share that with you.
I'd like to thank you for the right-hand screen. This is really challenging to coordinate the slides tonight. So just going on to the next slide, what we tried to do with this study is to really identify the areas of the city that have the most significant drainage issues. Now, there are smaller drainage issues that are located throughout the city, but we had to sort of say, let's focus in on the bigger picture issues, and we'll talk about those, recognizing that in addition to this, there will be other areas that arise over time. Once we identify those, we need to evaluate what's the cause of the problem. Are the storm sewers inadequate? Are they in poor condition? And then set a benchmark for what we're looking for. Develop a program, a conceptual program of improvements. As you'll note later in the presentation, this is not going to all be done at once. And so what we're really trying to do is set the stage for a long-term plan for the city to address stormwater issues. Sort of what the city did starting a century ago, and we'll talk about that in a second. Then we prioritize it. We can't do it all at once. We're going to have to do it over time. And so what are the highest and lowest priorities, recognizing those are going to change, and then put some conceptual cost estimates so we have a frame of reference of what kind of dollars we're talking about. So if we could flip over to the next slide, what we identified is 5 areas, 5 larger areas. Areas 1 through 4, I'm just going to comment on. When the city was founded, like many cities in Iowa, they founded it at the plateau at the top of the hill, which the good news is I don't have a flooding problem from creeks and rivers. The bad news is it's a long way to a creek and river to take the stormwater drainage. And so what we have, like many cities, is the founders had a whole different version of what stormwater management was. As long as the creek and river didn't flood, they were fine. The horse could get through it, even if it was 2 feet deep. A whole different deal today. And so what we found is that as you look at it, the first 4 areas all sort of radiate out from the square. And then we have another area over at East 13th and University that has an entirely different schedule. So we can either stay with this slide or flip to the next one. It doesn't make any difference. Study area 1 starts and really goes southeast from the square. So it goes all the way from the square, Broadway, all the way over to about East 8th Street and then south to Oskaloosa. It's all tributary to one storm sewer that discharges at East 8th Street. It's kind of progressed over time. Study area number 2 starts at the northeast corner of the square at Washington and Main and sort of goes off to the east over toward East 7th. Study area 3 starts at the northwest corner of the square and sort of goes out toward Boone Street. Study area 4 is a couple of different areas that are basically is southwest of the square. Unlike areas 1, 2, and 3, there's no single comprehensive storm sewer southwest. So we've got little different systems, one that goes south to University, the others that go over kind of west across the former railroad into the Central College facilities maintenance in the stadium area. And then we'll flip to study area 5, is the problem we have. This is really more of a sanitary sewer issue caused by the lack of stormwater drainage. We don't have any storm sewers there. We don't have any outlet for their storm sump pumps. And so we end up with that water sort of gets recycled around, pump it out, put it in the yard, goes back in. And so we end up overloading the sanitary sewer. So we looked at 4 areas that primarily focus on storm sewer issues, and one that's sort of a kind of a morph of storm and sanitary sewer issues. So flipping on to the next one, what we found in study areas 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is really the 4 that radiate out from the square, is that in the early 1900s, date not exactly known, but sometime it appears to be around the World War I era, the city built its first storm sewers. They were small diameter, maybe 8-inch pipes, sometimes a big one would be 10-inch pipe. And the idea was to get the water a block or 2 away from the square, and then just dump it out on the ground. In 1929, the city undertook a major storm sewer project. They storm sewered much of the developed part of the city at that time. Radiating out from the original World War I storm sewers, they got just a little bit bigger, but still by today's standard, very small. In the 1950s and 1960s, the city did 3 storm sewer projects. By the 1950s and 60s, the philosophy of stormwater drainage had changed, and we were looking at a higher level of protection. Storm sewers that could handle a larger storm event. So the storm sewers keep getting bigger as you go downstream, which is, in many respects, you're very fortunate, because a lot of cities don't have that. They have restrictions all the way down. And so, historically, when I've worked in the city, I've been told by some of the former employees that the problem was we don't have enough outlet capacity. For example, let's take the South Main Street area. That the problem there is because we don't have a pipe to get it out to go over to East 8th Street. The evaluation showed that's just the opposite. The pipe that discharges at East 8th Street doesn't even run full in a major rain. We don't have enough storm sewer and intake capacity to get the water from the little to the big pipe. So if you look at it, it's kind of a progression that gets smaller as you go upstream, and our problems are in that core area. Once we get into the bigger storm sewer, we generally have enough capacity. And when we're talking about a storm sewer capacity, there is no storm sewer system that's going to handle the biggest rainfall that ever could occur. If you have any questions, go talk to the people in Elkhart who got 12 inches in 6.5 hours. Nobody's going to do it. That's very difficult to handle. So what we tend to do as an engineering matter is we look at what's called a recurrence interval storm. That is like a 5-year storm. That doesn't mean that a storm is going to happen every 5 years. It simply means that any one year there's a 20% probability that it's going to occur. You and I can look at a 5-year storm and we wouldn't know what it looked like. I could ask you and you'd all come up with different answers. I could ask everybody in the audience, possibly except for the Public Works Director, they'd all come for a different answer. So when you look at the study, we're kind of changing around. Instead of using terms 5 years and 10 years, we're looking at rainfall events. So we're looking at the minimum would be if we had 2 inches in an hour. That's a pretty intense storm. That translates to about a 5-year storm here in Iowa. So we're looking at, if we build facilities, we want to make sure they have adequate capacity for 2 inches per hour to 3 inches per hour. That's in that 5 to 10 year range. Generally in the higher value areas, we'll go a little bit higher with that, a little bit more intense. As you get into areas where might be a little bit of nuisance flooding, streets might have a few inches of water in it in a rainfall, but it isn't really damaging any property, we'll tend to look more at that 2.5 inch per hour rainfall. So we kind of look at that. And if you look at where we are on the outlet sewers, almost all of them have more than 2 inches per hour, and some of them can handle 3 inches per hour. So if I can get the water from where it falls over to the outlet sewer, I actually then don't have to improve a lot of the outlet sewers. So if that makes sense, then we'll kind of flip to the next one if we can. Area 5 is a whole different story. There we simply have those residential streets that run north to University 13, 14, 15. There's no storm sewer. The water flows overland. There what we have is we're simply having an inadequate, we don't have any storm sewer. It all has to flow downhill. There's no place for people to put their sump pump discharges. So what we found is that in those kind of areas, oftentimes the solution is to build a place for people to hook their sump pump discharges, either by carrot or stick or some combination of carrots and sticks, which generally is what ends up happening. Get people to hook their sump pump lines up to those sewers, get the water out of the neighborhood so we're not recycling it around, and it keeps, dump it on the ground, it goes down, it's in the sump pump, pump it out, dump it on the yard, and it keeps going round and round, and pretty soon we're gonna overload the sanitary sewer. Because what happens is people don't like to put it in their yard, they put it in the sanitary sewer, not supposed to be there, not sized for it, we overload the sanitary sewer. And so, I can tell people to take their sump pumps off and dump it in their yard, but the recidivism rate for those to go back to the sanitary sewer is pretty high. If I tell people, if it goes out of their house and disappears and they never see it again, there's no incentive for them to put it back in the sanitary sewer. The recidivism rate for hooking to the sanitary sewer goes literally to 0. So it's kind of like your plumbing in your house. If it all goes away, you're happy. If it doesn't all go away, you're unhappy. And so what we're trying to do there is to try to get that same concept. The water goes away, you don't see it again, and there's no incentive to have to go back and deal with it again. So we can go to the next one. So again, this is kind of an overview of the findings. What we found is that the study area, the sewers, the upstream sewers, those would be basically the core areas closest to the downtown square area. Those are all have inadequate capacity. The outlet sewers appear to be adequate, but nobody's looked at them for decades. So they could have problems. We could have breaks in them. We could have a lot of debris in them. So they on paper look like they function, but like anything, you gotta go inspect it every so often and make sure it's clean and working. And so what we really do is we're focusing on 2 things. One is to better understand our outlet sewers. Second is to come up with a program that will build additional sewers to get the water out of where it's inadequate, get it over to the sewers. And so we had to prioritize that because if we look at it, we can't do all of those 5 areas, or in the case of the overall study, 8 areas at once. So we had to kind of figure out how do we go about doing the prioritization. There's no magic bullet to the prioritization. So what we're trying to look at is the magnitude of the problem, and are there other infrastructure needs that are going to be needed in the area. So for example, a magnitude of the project, the complaint I've heard of stormwater drainage, one that recurs all the time is the South Main Street area. And that's a problem. I got to get it from South Main Street over to about East 3rd and Independence. And once I get it to East 3rd and Independence, I got a pipe to make it go away. So I've got to kind of build up and get it to that point. There's other areas where the city is going to look at street improvements. Maybe there are going to be lead water services, which is an issue for a lot of cities. Do I have a lot of lead water services? So for example, in the area south part of towns, let's say from Independence down to Oskaloosa, say from Broadway over to East 3rd, where there's a lot of storm sewer inadequacies, there's also a fair number of lead water services. So there may be a project in that area that sort of combines it. So you don't generally want to go out and do a major storm sewer project on your own, because you're going to tear up a lot of infrastructure. So what you try to do is figure out how, going forward with this roadmap, do we synchronize the storm sewer needs with the other infrastructure needs. So what we might put down as priorities 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 today might change around as the city says, okay, we need to synchronize that effort with what else we've got to do. We have a street project that's needed. If we have other infrastructure projects. So that's kind of what we're doing, is saying, okay, we have 2 things we need to focus on. One is getting some adequate storm sewers in the upstream area, making sure our outlet sewers are clean, and then figuring out how do we synchronize this program over time into the city's overall public infrastructure improvement program. So flipping over to the next one, if we could. So this is kind of an outlet sewer inspection I mentioned earlier. We haven't looked at them for decades. So one of the things that probably early on we would recommend that the sewers that are outlined in red, which are the major sewers, they really need to be inspected, televised, walked, so that we know that they're free-flowing, we don't have problems with them, and that they're there when we build the improvements, that we actually can use that capacity. Because the last thing we want to do is play ostrich with the outlet sewers, go spend a bunch of money, put new sewers in, only to find out we had a problem in the outlet sewer and it won't work. So we're trying to say, let's take a little bit of a proactive look. It's a relatively small investment, but it really sets the stage for what we want to do going forward in the improvements. So that recommendation number one is that sometime in the not too distant future, we start looking at those sewers. We don't have to do them all at once. We should probably prioritize them based on what we're going to do for the other storm sewer improvement projects. Next slide. So conceptually, what we're going to look at is the older sewers that were built World War I, 1929, even into the early part of the 1950s. Those sewers, a lot of them are 100 years old or close thereto. They're hopelessly undersized. They might have 10, 20% of the adequate capacity. So instead of an 8-inch sewer, we need an 18-inch sewer. In those areas, it's probably not worth trying to save the sewers, build new sewers, build new intakes. Because if I get 50% of the capacity, I spend more money, oftentimes trying to integrate with an older system that's probably wearing out than I would just to replace it. As I get into the mid-sized sewers, and this would be an example, one would be on Independence from Main Street over to East 3rd Street. It has about 50, 55% of the capacity that's needed for the long term. There, on a case-by-case basis, we look at, is it better to build a parallel sewer and use both sewers, or is it better to replace it? Now, in the case of the Independence sewer from Main to East 3rd, that's a 1929 sewer. So we have to look at it and say, if we build an improvement project and we're going to rely on this sewer, and is it better to build a new sewer and retire what's now a 97-year-old sewer? Or do I build a parallel sewer figuring I got to get another 50 years out of that 97-year-old sewer? So those are the kind of things, as you get farther into the specifics of the project, that you would look at. We're not trying at this point to iron out all of those details. Councilmember Carlson, your horse and the cart argument, we're playing with the horse, and then as we work forward to it, we'll put the cart behind the horse. But what we're really trying to do with this is set, here's a plan, here's an overarching plan we've never had, so that we can look forward and say, as we do public improvement projects and plan for those over the next 5, 10, or 20 years, this is integrating stormwater management into the overall public improvement program. So flipping over to the next slide. These are just some of the priority areas. Their numbers are a little bit off, but if we kind of look at it, the number one priority is probably 1 through 4 are probably about, going to depend on what other things happen. But one is the South Main Street. This would be really from the square down to about East 3rd and Independence, but it's all north of Independence. Priority 2 is really the area probably from Broadway to East 3rd, from Independence down to Oskaloosa. That is all 1929 sewers, so they're hopelessly undersized. If we look at number 3, the project number 3 is really going from the northwest. This would be from the northwest corner of the square going northwest, and then 4 would be from the northeast corner of the square going east. Those are about equivalent in magnitude. Then we also then have to deal with the one at East 13th and University, and there's a couple other ones. There's another one up that's farther north in the northeast of the square. And there's a couple over there that are in the southwest corner of the square. Earlier this evening, there was a gentleman who spoke about the 1100 block of Peace Street and the groundwater. In addition to groundwater, there's really no storm sewer in that area. And so there's a fair amount of not only groundwater, but surface water that flows southerly down toward Peace Street. It really doesn't have a good outlet. So one of those priorities, which is a smaller one, would be to do something in that area. Now, magnitude-wise, that's a lot smaller, so that might be, even though magnitude-wise it might not rise to the top, but it might be something that's more manageable and might actually float up at some point in the priority. Some of them are kind of looking at the Central College sewers. Those are probably, those outlet sewers are adequate, but the storm sewer, for example, it's a half a block south of West Market Park. That's hopelessly undersized. And so a couple blocks of sewer get over across the old railroad right away into a sewer on Central college campus that's adequately sized, could do a lot of benefits. So it's gonna be kind of this big and little projects that we look forward over time. So this is next, if we could. This is just sort of a magnitude. So the South Main Street area, we're estimating 2 to 2.25 million. It's rounded because we don't really know. We're just trying to look at what the conceptual number would be. It's gonna change because somebody's gonna have to design it. It's not gonna be built for a period of time. So not only detailed design, but inflation will enter into that. The south area, this would be down from Independence down to Oskaloosa, from Broadway over to East Third. It's the biggest of the projects. It's $2.7 to $3 million. The northwest corner of the square, this would be from basically over heading from Broadway and Washington up toward Boone Street. That's $2.4 to $2.7 million estimated. And then priority 4 going east on Washington from Main Street and sort of curling up to the north. That's the smallest of them, 1.6 to 1.8. Those are the 4 bigger ones. The others are smaller. If you just flip to the next one, we'll give you an example. This is just an example of what it is. The areas where the sewers are shown in red, those are undersized sewers that would need to be replaced. The green sewer, which is on Main Street, that was built as a part of the Mollengott project, that's adequately sized. The orange sewer going east on Independence is the one I referenced earlier. It's got about 50% of the capacity, but it's 97 years old. And then east of that, we're in the 1950s and 60s sewer that has adequate capacity. So this is the kind of thing that would be built to address that South Main Street area. The next one, please. This is the priority 2. This is that area basically from Broadway over to East Third, from Independence down to Oskaloosa. You can see there, almost everything is inadequate. There's really no outlet sewer. It all flows up and ties into that larger 72-inch storm sewer at East Third and Independence. This is all the 1929 construction, and so this would be an area that would be essentially a complete replacement. So that the same thing works for the balance of the priority areas, but I just want to highlight a couple of them tonight. And then moving on to the next one. This would be study area 5. There's a slightly undersized storm sewer on the University that goes over to East 13th Street, and the storm sewer that goes northwest from that under the football stadium and dumps out just south of the aquatic center. That's adequately sized. But what we're showing here is extending some smaller diameter storm sewer south to create some outlets with a sump pump. When this project actually gets implemented, somebody might say, well, let's just upsize the north end of those and put a couple intakes in to help the localized drainage. Those are things that we could refine. This is a $400,000 to $700,000 project, so it's much smaller. Priority-wise, if you look at magnitude, it probably is the 5th highest priority, but it's the smallest, and it's something that might be able to work in, work in a program without putting it in a much larger project. So projects like this, as well as potentially, I mentioned earlier, the storm sewer over the 1100 block of Peace Street, going down to West 5th and University. Those are the kind of projects that are smaller, that sort of fit in kind of between the larger projects. So that's kind of an overview. We've got some major issues to address. They're going to take a long time to do. But I think this gives you a roadmap. It also, I think, for as long as I've worked here, this is the first time anybody's really said, the problem is at the upstream end, not the downstream end. So we're sort of reversing what had been the conventional wisdom. And I think in many respects that simplifies how we go forward and look at it. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Sorry for speaking fast, but I know the meeting's been running well.
So what would you suggest then be the next steps?
We'll finalize that, and then we'll work with Public Works and sort of integrate that into the city's capital improvement program.
Okay.
So this is sort of a roadmap. We've got to work with Will's staff to say, okay, what is the long-term plan? How does this fit with street improvements? Do we have to do something with lead water services? Are there sanitary sewer issues? Mr. Mayor, and that's how we'll put it together. And then you'll see these probably pop up, I would guess, in the capital improvement program. And you might see 1 or 2 of them in the next 5 years. A lot of them are probably going to be beyond 5 years, but at least we have them on the radar. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a couple. Just thank you for explain. I was having a little bit of trouble reconciling the map on those top priority areas
Yeah,
with the
messed up.
Okay, because that good. Because I
Sorry
thought
about that. I grabbed the wrong slide.
No, that's fine. Because that's
the
no problem.
numbers are right. The graphic is wrong.
Okay. Okay, and then just the second thing, this is maybe beyond your scope, but I'd like to hear on the cities you work with, how many of them have a stormwater utility?
At this point, almost every city over about 2,000 or 3,000 in Iowa has a stormwater utility.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily saying it's good or bad.
No, I
but
was
I'm
just curious,
saying,
because
it's
I guess.
For those of you who are not familiar with what a stormwater utility is, it's an enterprise fund similar to like water and sewer, where there's a fee that you charge property owners on a monthly. For example, you have water, sewer, you might, whatever else you might have on there. This is a fee that's based on, typically a single-family residence would have a unified fee, start out with $3-5 a month, and then you can either have a simplified system that looks at all the commercial properties in a similar manner, or there's a more complex method that looks at impervious area and paved surfaces. There's a balancing act because the impervious area brings in more money, but it also hits large property owners with like parking lots, buildings. It hits fairly high. There's no tax exempt signage, it's utilities. So and what the purpose is that the cities use that to help assist with funding stormwater improvements, so they don't have to take that all out of the general fund. And so it's sort of the same concept that the city oftentimes uses sanitary sewer enterprise money to fund sanitary sewer improvements. The same with water improvements are funded out of the water enterprise fund. The same would apply for stormwater utility. So to answer your basic question, most cities in Iowa that are your size have adopted a stormwater.
Yeah, that's kind of been my experience as I travel around and just ask, so thanks for letting us know those statistics.
Anything else? If not, thank you.
Okay, now you wanna go back to the right away?
Yeah, well, we still have Bob here, if we could mix up the order again. And I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Wolf next and to talk about the Washington Street traffic analysis. And this is a proposal by Bob's firm as well, so I'm sure Bob will have some input on it as well. So go right ahead, Wolf.
So as we heard, I think, in the last couple of council meetings, there is some, and quite rightly, some concern about the West Washington corridor. We know there are a lot of folk coming into Pella from the west side, and we're expecting that to grow. There's good development in that area. We want to make sure we have the right street system for them. There's also a corridor is an opportunity. It's a marketing opportunity for the city. It allows us to say, hey, look, this is us, this is Pella. But primary here, we're looking at the issue of how do we figure out what the best thing is for us to do in this West Washington corridor. So I think the next slide, we're going to look at all the bits and pieces that are going on there. So including stormwater, but also all the other utilities, sidewalks, trails, intersections. We want to ensure that this is going to be a safe road corridor for all the people who travel along it or beside it. We're going to get through this a long-term vision. One of the things that this will set us up for nicely is to go out to one of the planning organizations and see if we can get funding further down the road from them to allow us to develop this and to make sure that we have a safe road system out there. I think it will give us a picture of what the costs will be of getting this road corridor to the situation that we want it to be, and will give us, as Bob said, in regard to the stormwater, again, it gives us an overarching plan. We may not be able to do everything all at once, but if we figure out where we get the most bang for our buck that we begin with, it gives us a good way of getting going. Bob, did you have anything more you wanted to add on that?
Glad to answer any questions.
I get people asking all the time, I know everybody loves stoplights, but I have people asking, how come we don't have more stoplights out there?
Well, surprisingly, we have quite a few, but, you know, one of the things is to look and see, do we need more? You know, for example, where old 163 comes in to West Washington, not far away from where we just put in new stoplights at Quick Start, do we need something there? And then further on, there are other places as well. So that would be part of the
I got one the other day with the new Ulrich plant. Well, I think that's West 12th.
Yeah.
And what is the concrete guy?
Dingaman.
Dingaman.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another one. That because that is so close to Quick Star and where you get on 163. So that can be a real bottleneck. But anyway, life is getting interesting out there.
Oh, yes.
So, well, if you already answered one of my comments I was going to make here on way west on the going on to Highway 163. I don't know if we need to make it part of this one, but at some point we need to take a look at coming in from the east, right by the bank of Maine and Washington, with that left, because the road narrows there and it should be wider. And there's, of course, I can look out that window where I work and I see the bottlenecks that come when you're coming from that east, because it's the road, we're gonna have to gain probably buy some right of way if we don't have it already, I'm not sure. But at some point, I think we should have a study on that. Maybe Bob's already done one.
No, what I was gonna say on that is that in discussions with Will, we know there's some smaller, what I'm gonna say, more localized issues, not necessarily the whole West Washington corridor, but we've talked about how do we go about looking at, you know, like Washington and Broadway, or Washington, that part, we get over on the Hazel Street corridor. So looking at more smaller things that maybe not, you know, there's ways, the city has a mechanism to do some of those. They don't even necessarily have to come back for formal council approval, but we know in addition to this, there's 3 or 4 other, what I'm saying, hot spots that we need to look at. Those would be more on a selected basis and not on as large of an omnibus basis. Is that?
Good, thank you. Yep.
But I do think it's important. I would say we need to get this study done. Get a plan for that corridor, that Washington Street corridor. So I would encourage this to be brought for formal approval, to approve this study and come with some potential solutions.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think we're ready for the right-of-way management ordinance, so I'll turn the floor over again to Will to walk council through this one.
So, you know, we've heard a lot about utilities already this evening. One of the wonderful things we do here in Pella is we get as much as possible underground, so we don't have, you know, wires up over the streets that get taken down when we have storms and tree limbs fall down. The bad side of that is we tend to have knitting under the street, and this has developed over time. We do have some franchise agreements, but we can't force anyone who wants to go into the right-of-way to have a franchise agreement. This right-of-way ordinance is basically getting rid or supplanting excavation ordinance process, and it's coming in with a whole bunch of different things. It gives us a standardized permit application process, which means everybody knows where they have to be and what they have to do. We've got things like, if you're going to dig up the street, how are you going to deal with traffic going by that? We have an example of that right now on Idaho Drive. We've got the temporary traffic signals in that control the traffic, so it's one-way flow only. We want, when people say, hey, we need to put this in, they have to have a plan in place for keeping everybody safe while that's going on. Getting utility relocations to occur within 30 days of city notification, that would be huge for that will be a wonderful tool for us to have, because we have faced a bunch of holdups where a utility has said, oh yeah, we'll get to it. And we're left holding the bag. Well, nothing is going on. So that gets rid of that. We are increasing the fees. Currently, our right-of-way permit or our excavation permit is, I believe, $30. It'll go up to $150, or for emergencies up to $300. And we include in that fee the inspection to make sure they've done it right. And if it turns out it needs re-inspecting, they will be charged time for that. Just to give you a sense, typically 32 excavation permits in a year and 16 emergency requests. We've got a full ordinance for you to look at, put together with our city attorney who's gone through it, and there's a lot of examples from other cities that we've looked at, chewed over, and put in there. This will, quite frankly for us, be a wonderful tool to help us avoid some of the logistic delays that we've faced because of utilities. Really want to hear what you have to say. If there are some issues that you've seen in there that make you go, hey, wow, what's going on here? But we want to give it to you before we revise it, get a final version, and bring that up for your consideration formally.
So you're saying there's an average of 48 requests per year. That's kind of standard.
If we call it
Are
between
they,
40 and 50.
can you break, are they like other utility companies? Are they the majority of it?
Yeah.
Like a MediaCom or somebody like that, or?
MediaCom, gas.
Is there's
Windstream.
some citizens too, though, that would
Yeah.
request?
Yeah, we do get some of those, but the majority are going to be utility companies coming in and saying, and one of the issues we have in our capital improvement plan that we're going to look at 3rd Street, East 3rd next year, and do some rebuilding along that. We don't want to be held up for 2 weeks, or 2 months rather, at the beginning of that, because utilities couldn't get their act together, hence the 30 days. We can plan for 30 days, so can they. We don't want to spring anything on anyone, but we do want a reasonable response. And these are, we've taken these numbers and days and so on from other examples around the state that seem to work. So we haven't just pulled them out of thin air.
I was just going to follow up on the numbers. When you say 32 excavation permits, does that include the 16 emergency, or 16 on top of that?
There are 16 on top of that.
So then with 48, how many of them roughly percentage-wise required an additional inspection?
Maybe less than 10, I
Okay.
would say. But
I would really encourage you on the cost for the additional inspection, make it either a flat fee or make it half of the original fee, because I don't want Mandy to spend time if John earns $50 an hour and Calvin earns 12. You know, they keep track of that. I think let's simplify that and just say, hey, if it's an emergency, it costs $300. If you re-inspect, it's $150. If it's $150 normal one, if you have to re-inspect, $75.
thank you. Awesome.
Or whatever numbers you want, but just
Yeah.
as an example, to do something like that.
Other comments or input, very welcome. And understood, it's quite a long ordinance, so.
Yeah, well, I know there's been a lot of issues with other utilities not responding and holding up projects, so whatever pressure we can put on, I don't know, is there, let's say that this 30-day notification, if they don't comply within 30 days, can we start finding?
There is a.
Is that part of this, or is that a
Yeah,
different deal?
what this is, and I think what the mayor just explained, is gas and electric utilities, we can require a franchise agreement Federal legislation recently, telecommunications utilities, we can't require franchise agreements. So that's why this ordinance is important, because we've had issues not with Pella Fiber, with other telecommunications utilities doing locates, relocating facilities, holding up projects on it. And as Wolf said, we've got some major corridor projects that we're trying to do, and we don't want to run into any unexpected delays. So to answer your question, Mayor, if we have a violation under this ordinance, it's subject to a municipal infraction. And for these utilities, if they fail to do locates, fail to relocate their things, we intend to go out there and cite them. And I believe the first offense is $250. And the way we would do it is cite them for each day that they fail to relocate their facilities. And if you look at our cost on it, we think that's a fair trade-off. Hopefully that'll get them some incentives to comply with the state of Iowa rules for locates, as well as relocating their facilities.
And obviously, we want to be in partnership rather than conflict with the utilities, but it helps if we have some tools in our toolbox to encourage a respectful partnership.
Yeah, I like it.
Looks great.
Thanks, Wolf.
Thank you.
Last thing is the property tax update.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, what we have this evening is hopefully a brief update on Iowa's recent property tax legislations. Most of the items that we are covering this evening would go into effect on July 1st, 2027. So if you hear the fiscal year 2028, we're talking about the fiscal year that would start on July 1st, 2027 and extend through June 30th, 2028. Probably the biggest change to the bill is Iowa has adopted an additional regulation as it applies to property taxes. The easiest way to look at it is if the city levies $1 in the current fiscal year, once we get to 2028, what the rule states is you can levy basically $1.02 with our main general fund consolidated levy on it as well. So traditionally in Iowa, how things have worked is you have the local property tax rate that's established by the city council, then you have building valuations or property valuations, and that determines the amount that you've levied. What the state of Iowa has done is they've taken a look at the total amount that you can actually levy with our main operating levy in the general fund, and they've capped it at a 2% actual amount levied on that as well. So getting into this, when we look at it, when we talk about the general fund consolidated levy, what it's important to the city is that it accounts for about 73% of the property taxes that are generated to support the general fund. And when we talk about the general fund, we're talking about things such as police services, EMS services. There's some street operations in there. We talked about a stormwater utility. Some of our costs that we take care of the storm sewer system are embedded in the general fund as well. It's also quality of life services such as our parks, our recreation. We also have library services in there, and there's also some city administration in there as well. So it covers a lot of the services that the city provides, and what the state has said is that the amount that you could levy is capped at that 2%. Now, without over-complicating it, there's also about 27% of our levies that don't have any limitations, and these would be things like employee contributions or city contributions for the retirement systems for our employees, health insurance, property and liability insurance. So the uncapped amount is about 27%. And before I get into some of the details on this, the best way to look at it is if we said next year in 2028, and if this was the only legislation piece that was going to impact, and you're only looking at 2028, and you ask me, is that a big deal? I'd say no. And the reason why is if you look at Iowa's property tax system, what happens on even number years like 2028, that's based off of January 1st, I believe 2026 assessment on it. That's a non-revaluation year. So for the last 25 years, if you look the way Iowa's property tax system worked, since you don't have revaluation, you're looking at the general fund, we've looked at revenue increases less than 2% in some of those years. In some years it's been about 2%. So this is standard course of business for us. We've been living with these restrictions for 25 years. The difference is when you get into odd number years, then you get into property reassessments. That's when the taxable base grows to support the general fund. So what we've done financially planning for a number of years is we've looked at the increases in odd number of years, and we factored it over a 24-month period, realizing that has to cover for the next year because you're going to be stagnant the following year. That's what we've done forever. What the state has essentially done, or what they're proposing, not proposing, what they've approved on it, is they've said every year is gonna be an even number assessment year, so it's 2%, basically. And there's some caveats to it, a little bit of things that's in addition to it, but that's basically the rules that we're dealing with on it. So the best way to look at it, what we're probably gonna summarize on this, is there's both short-term issues and there's also probably long-term issues for a growing community like us that we're gonna have to deal with, and we're gonna have to financially plan, and we're gonna have to develop a strategy on it as well. Now, when we look at this, before we get to the overall impact, I got a few other things. In addition to 2028, the state has also cut back on, they've had reimbursement credits to the city, and this is for prior property tax, I'd say tax breaks, call it whatever. I'm not arguing right or wrong or difference, but what they call is state funding assistance to cities, and that takes the place of tax cuts that they've given prior. In this case would be business and industrial property, commercial and industrial property owners. The lion's share of that, there's also some residential reimbursements for the homestead credits. The end result is those funding decreases that they've eliminated for 2028 amounts to about $212,000. So if we're going to talk about what does this mean to Pella in 2028, I tell you, if you wanted to hang your hat on a number, it's $212,000. Now, to put that into perspective, when you look at the overall general fund, that's about 1.3% of the overall general fund. So it's something by itself that's very manageable from the city's standpoint, but we got to deal with it. Probably the bigger issue is on a long-term basis. If you look at every year being essentially capped at 2%, we're going to have to develop strategies to deal with it in the long term as well. So let's go ahead and we'll have an opportunity for questions. I'll quickly get through the other items. I would say from my perspective, the TIF legislation changes generally positive. I think it's going to be a benefit what was actually approved for TIF and also tax increment financing. They standardized it for residential TIFs. Up to 23 years. It used to be under the current rules at each TIF district. If you did market rate housing, you were at a 10-year life for the TIF district. If the county and the school district approved it, you could go up to 15, but extending it out to 23 years will give developers confidence that they'll be able to recoup their investment for public infrastructure. There's also no longer a requirement for the city to withhold low and moderate income housing on this, and I would say just in development issues with the city, this is a big issue for developers, because if you did market rate housing for a project, what state law says, and to make this easy, if you gave a developer a reimbursement for the public infrastructure that they have to construct and dedicate to the city of Pella, if you said over time you're going to reimburse them with incremental property taxes from the development on it, up to the $1 million on it, what the developer to get of the $1 million, they'd have to generate an additional percentage that was attributed to the LMI or low and moderate income percentage in Marion County. That's about 33%. So the developer would look at it saying, well, I spent $1 million on the public infrastructure. Now over the next 15 years, I'm hoping to get paid back. But for me to get the $1 million back, I got to generate $1,330,000 to cover the LMI funds with it. And then we also had some restrictions on what we had to do with the LMI funds. We're no longer under those restrictions. So in my opinion, what that's going to do to developers is going to make cash flow issues easier for their development. And also I'm thinking from the city side of things, we may not have necessarily the full amount of awards that we've had to in the past as well. So I think overall that's a positive item for the city of Pella. We've talked about this as part of the urban renewal plan strategies, but after December 31st of this year, it doesn't appear for new urban renewal districts we'll be able to capture the school foundation levy. And that's about $5.40. That's about 20% of the tax rate for a TIF reimbursement district on it as well, to put it in a percentage as well. So in looking at my overall just, observation, when we look at TIF and you said, well, what's the city's posture on development? I tell you, development's very important. We need to continue to redevelop, in my opinion, on this. When you look at your caps of your operational on this, and then we talked about a few of these items, but let's talk a little about these public infrastructure projects. What doesn't get talked about in these urban renewal plans is they all contain a significant amount of public infrastructure on it. The Imagine More Urban Renewal Plan has right around $22 million of public infrastructure projects. That's existing public infrastructure on it as well. If you look at just some of these projects, like the Central Business District, renovation of the downtown, to deal with the lead water service line issues, stormwater issues, reconstruction of the streets, that's going to be a significant amount. The Washington Street corridor analysis on it, converting that, potentially upgrading that to a 3-lane road throughout the corridor, that'll be significant. Stormwater management improvement plans that we talked about this evening, those are gonna be important. And where I'm leading with this is, about a month ago, we had a session on urban renewal planning, linking our commercial districts all together, leveraging the city's risk on these development projects. A big part of that strategy was to be able to fund public infrastructure projects. And so I'm still of the mindset that that strategy's served us well for the last 20 plus years going forward. That strategy, I believe, could work in the future as well. So I would tell you development's going to be very, very important to the city of Pella in the future. That's my opinion on the matter. Now, Mr. Mayor, we'll wrap up here very soon, but I have one more slide, so Heidi, let's go ahead. Now, these are in no particular order, and I also want to make sure everyone understands I'm not recommending any of these as official action tonight, but you may be looking at it as if the general fund, if we had a $212,000 issue for 2028, you could say shortfall, call it whatever you want. It's about 1% of our general fund budget. What would you do to address that? And also with the thought that your revenues, the lion's share of your property tax revenues, which supports a majority of services in the city, are going to be capped at 2%. What strategies would you talk about, or what things would you consider? That's where this came about, but it's not an exhaustive list. There's probably more options than what there are on here, and I'm going to ad lib on a few of these items. But again, these are in no particular order, but I approached it, if this was a business, what would you do? You would look at, first of all, as positions came open, vacant positions, you make sure they're structured accordingly, they're still needed, there isn't a better way of doing things, and you would just evaluate every single open position that came about before you filled it. I think anybody would do that if you're facing a revenue shortfall on it. Number 2 is you'd look at user fees for city services on there, and you'd make sure that they're reasonable, equitable, and they provide the appropriate level of cost recovery. Not everything we do is supported by property taxes. A lot of it's greatly subsidized by property taxes, but you would look at the services the city provides and those user fees, and you'd establish policies on cost recovery on those to make sure they're adequate, all in an attempt to offset the property tax loss on it as well. Number 3, this one has a few more items here, and it gets, I don't want to get too far off base, but you look at alternative revenue sources. Looking at this realistically, if you say we're a growing community, growth's important, we've got public infrastructure we have to fund, we have to balance it all. You look at alternative revenue sources, and in light of this, what you would look at, and we talked a little bit about the services. City of Pella does a wonderful job providing services, but we provide services not only for the City of Pella, but for a lot of rural Marion County and Mahaska County as well. So on a few of these items, you take a look at things like an EMS, Essential Services Tax. Marion County is currently reviewing that. The good part about this legislation is they increase the maximum capacity on the tax from 75 cents per thousand taxable valuation up to $1.50 as well. I think if you're going to look at this just from an equity standpoint and you look at the city's tax base, I don't know how we could have that conversation without talking about annexation on it, and it's more along the lines of areas that are just outside the city of Pella, develop, enjoy a lot of the benefits by being in close proximity to the city of Pella, but yet are contributing to the property tax to support those services. I think we got to take a look at it on it as well. And I would also state other cities are looking at things such as franchise fees on gas and electric, and the reason why they're looking at that is when you look at those franchise fees, those utilities operate in the public right of way. I could tell you the right-of-way management ordinance that we have, the $150 fee for an excavation fee, that doesn't cover the city's cost for managing the right-of-way, nowhere close to it. But with those franchise fees, what that allows is entities that may be in TIF districts, like homes in TIF districts, where in essence that we're getting debt service taxes, but a majority of the revenue is going back to the developer to reimburse them for public infrastructure that they built, dedicated to the city of Pella. It allows some revenue generation to support city services as well. And again, I'm not recommending this, but these are things to consider. I would say another one that a lot of cities have that we've just embedded the cost. When you look at our tax rate, I would tell you, most any city in Iowa, we have one of the lowest tax rates in the state of Iowa. We also are, I would say, and I'm proud of it, we don't run out and establish utilities on it. We may have to if we're going to do a significant amount of stormwater in there, but a lot of utilities have the oversight and administration of the stormwater utility, those personnel costs paid with the stormwater utility. That should probably be another one up there for council's consideration. And the last one I want to have, and I want to throw some not tummy comfort in it, that's the wrong way to put it. But if you look at the city's overall property tax rate, we're at $10.75. A couple of years ago, we had to increase it by about 55 cents. We were at $10.20 for 20 plus years on it. One of the things that doesn't get talked about is we're not big on increasing property taxes. We take a lot of pride in our financial stewardship. But the truth is, on those employee benefit levies, if you remember that first slide, and 27% of our funds are generated from those employee benefit levies. If we taxed everything that we could out of those, we generate an additional $700,000 for the city of Pella. I'm not recommending that, but that's an option that council could consider in the future as well. So these options that we listed, they're not in priority, they're not exhaustive. These are just things that I think we should be talking about and considering. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the property tax and urban renewal legislation, along with any discussions on where we go from here. So,
Okay, any questions or comments for Mike?
It's gonna be exciting.
I just had a specific question. Maybe we could go back to your first slide on this presentation. There you go. On I should have said the second one. Yeah, that one right there. The 2%, the new construction outside TIF districts exempt from the 2% revenue cap. Does that mean after the construction it can go up with market, or so if we are in an inflationary era and values raise 10%, we're not held to the 2% cap, or is it just new construction, once it's set, then it's subject to the 2% cap?
What the intent of the law is if you have new homes that are built on there, the minute they're built on the first assessment, that's new construction, so that's new valuation. So you get credit for the new valuations plus your 2%, and that becomes your base value for future years.
So that stays at 2% after that point?
Yes.
And then how do they define if somebody has this basement that's just bare, then completely finishes their basement, or they turn a living room into a master bedroom? Are those considered new construction as well when there's major home improvements but the footprint doesn't change?
Well, usually there's a partial assessment on it, so it's my understanding they have a partial value. They're looking for new valuation, so there'd be a partial assessment for the basement. And when the home comes on, then they tax the rest of the structure. So it's my understanding that's probably one of the questions the Department of Management's going to have to make sure we get answers to. But I'm assuming when the home's built, that would add it to the new. Probably when we look at the term new construction, it should be new valuation.
Yeah, because I was thinking of an existing home, a 40-year-old home, and those things were done to it.
Yeah, I think what they're looking at, there's two things that I saw through that. They had what's called the reevaluation, reassessment base value, then they had your construction valuation. So I'd assume in your example that property could be over 2 years. They'd have a partial assessment on the basement, and then they'd have the rest of the value of the home, and that would all still count as new construction. The big takeaway that I didn't mean to skip on it, I'm not minimizing on it, but this has been a source of contention for cities, is when you look at TIF districts, once the developer's paid back for the public infrastructure, retired it, cities would like to see that new valuation counted as new construction and new valuation once it's released back to the general fund. What the way the rules are written right now, is that would be subject to the 2% too. So, as well. So again, that's a state of Iowa issue on it. Yeah, they're in charge. This is the direction the state's going. We got to do our best to comply with it. Look, we're going to be fine with this. We have a lot of options here, and that's what I'm trying to relate to the councils. I feel we have a lot of options, and I also think the best days of the city are ahead of us as well. But this is going to be more challenging. No ifs and doubts about it.
Okay. A lot of options will be discussed, I'm sure, at budget time. All right, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. Bandstra and Stryland. All in favor, please say yes. Opposed, no. Mandy, please call the roll.
Bandstra?
Yes.
Stryland?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Carlson?
Motion passed. We are adjourned.